Well, hello and welcome back to Principles of Macroeconomics. I am your host, Dr. B. Glad to have all of you with me today on this very cold, dreary October day in 2022. Before we get started talking about gross domestic product, which is how we measure a nation's income, before we jump into that, I do quickly want to point where we are in the classroom. So we're in module 2, week 7. Wow, week 7 already. Holy smokes, we're getting so close to the midterm exam, which I believe is next week. So we're in week 7. So for this week, we're going to talk about gross domestic product. And you'll notice that your homework assignment for this week is a little different than others. This one's going to be a discussion board. So this discussion is on gross domestic product and about the concepts we're about to cover. But I want you to please take note of the requirements and also the points. So the questions about gross domestic product, and so there's multiple questions here, right? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4 questions. So you need to have at least a full paragraph, 5 to 6 sentences to be able to answer these 4 questions. And the paragraph's about 150 words roughly. Please include citations and references wherever you can. And then I need you to respond to 2 of your classmates with full paragraphs, we see your classmate Kiona. Thank you, Kiona, for this wonderful start to the discussion. She has a very well-crafted paragraph here with her reference there at the end, and it's very well done. So this is kind of what I'm expecting from all of you. So if you please take care of this first part of the discussion try to do it by about Thursday night. For your original post, and then respond to 2 of your classmates by Sunday night. I think that will help to add to the discussion. The other thing I want you to note is it's worth 10 points. Okay, 10 points is 10% of your whole grade. That's a whole letter grade, y'all. So please don't miss a whole letter grade by not doing this discussion. You want to make sure you do this discussion. Very, very important. It's worth a whole letter grade. So please don't pass this opportunity up. It needs to be done on time, yes? So by Sunday night, you need to have 1 full paragraph answering these questions, and then 2 additional paragraphs, 1 for each student. Respond to 2 classmates. So that's what I'm looking for. 3 paragraphs total, 1 original, 2 responses. Any questions on that directive? Clear, yeah?
All clear.
Awesome. Thank you, Ethan. Appreciate the affirmative. Great. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into the topic of gross domestic product now that you know what your assignment is. And, feel free to work on the assignment as we're talking as well. Sometimes we find that helpful, or just wait till later on tonight to do it. So let's talk about gross domestic product, which is what we call a way to measure the nation's income. Since this is a macroeconomics course, we look at the nation as a whole. That's what macroeconomics means. We look at the whole puzzle, not just pieces of it. So we're going to answer these questions throughout the next hour. And we're going to talk about gross domestic product, what it is, how do we measure it, what does it mean in relationship to the income and spending. We'll talk about the various components of it, how it relates to inflation. That's a big one, especially now in 2022. And we'll also talk about how gross domestic product measures a society's well-being. That's a big one as well. So as you know, we're in macroeconomics in this course, and that's the study of the economy on a nationwide. That's a nationwide study of the economy. That's what macro means from a high level. We look at things like inflation, unemployment, economic growth, etc. So that's That's Economics 201 is macroeconomics. That's this course. In 202, if you haven't taken it already, that's microeconomics. That studies, it's more like personal economics because it focuses on the individual households and companies and making decisions and how the markets interact with each other. So think of macroeconomics, that's 201. Microeconomics, that's 202. That's how I want you to conceptualize the difference. And so we're going to talk about, of course, macroeconomics. That's the course that we're in right now. So as we're looking at macroeconomics, we look at the country as a whole, not just from the perspective of individual households. So there's this concept that we use to measure the income of the entire society, the entire country, if you will. And we call that gross domestic product. And with gross domestic product, we look at the entire country's income as a whole. Okay, so in other words, we add up all the people's incomes, everyone that's working for the year that works in the United States. That's how we find the nation's income. Okay. Then we also look at the amount that the country as a whole is spending on goods and services. So we look at the income coming in from everyone that's working in the economy in the whole country. And we look at all the money going out for the whole country, everyone who's spending money on goods and services. That's what gross domestic product is. So we're looking at the income and expenses for the whole country. And it really is a measure of how well the country is doing as a whole financially. Some of you have asked me before the differences of, are we in a recession or are we okay? I've gotten that question a few times over the past few weeks. And the answer is, it depends on how you look at it. But historically, if we have 2 or more consecutive losses in gross domestic product for 2 quarters of the year. So for half the year, if we lost gross domestic product for the two quarters, quarter 1 and quarter 2, then technically, yes, we are in a recession. So to answer your question for 2022, are we in a recession? The answer is yes. Technically, we are. But this one's a little different because we're not experiencing high levels of job loss. We are experiencing high levels of inflation, which is also unusual when we're having a recession. We are also having inflation. The answer to your question is, yes, the country is currently in a recession because we have 2 consecutive quarters, quarter 1 and quarter 2 for 2022, of loss in gross domestic product. So the answer to your question is, yes, we are in a recession. Technically. But it's a different kind because there's not as much job loss and we also have inflation. So it's kind of a weird recession. It's a technical recession. When we look at gross domestic product, when the income equals the amount of expenditures, that's the point of break even. Yeah. When the income equals outflow, the income equals the expenses, we call that break even in accounting. Economics, that's the point of equilibrium, basically, right? Where the income equals the expenses. For the economy as a whole, we look at every dollar that the buyer spends based off of their income. So again, whole picture. We look at the whole United States to understand the financial health of the country And we do that by looking at gross domestic product. Okay. Here's a couple of diagrams. For some reason, economists love looking at diagrams. They look at scattergrams, scatter plots. They love circular flow diagrams for some reason. And of course, they like their line graphs and charts, etc. But the circular flow diagram, it kind of puts it into a nice visual perspective of the gross domestic product for us. So economists like using the circular flow diagram to show us what the spending and the revenue looks like visually for gross domestic product. So the income and the expenses. We look at, to determine this diagram, we look at production factors of labor, which is the workforce, right? The people going to work, that's the labor. Land, lands that the companies own. Capital's money, yeah. And natural resources. These are the factors we look at for production. These are the things you need to produce a product, right? You need employees. You need property, plant, and equipment, the capital. Property being the land. And then you need natural resources, right? You need water, electric, gas, etc. These are the things you need in a factory to produce products. And, of course, the companies need to pay the employees wages. And the employees who have houses or live somewhere, they have to pay rent or they have to pay some mortgage or whatever. Cost of living. So these are the payment factors that we take into consideration. The best way I can show you is through this circular flow diagram. I personally like this, okay? So we have the two groups. You have the households. That's where we all live, yeah? We got the companies that we work for. So we live in a house that we purchased using income that we got from working at the firm, the company. Yeah? You see where I'm going with this? It's a circular flow. So we got the house that we live in because we work at the company. We used our income to pay for the house. Right? You either own your house or you rent your house where you live, yeah? And you got to pay for that somehow. So how do you pay for it? You work at the company. The company gives you income. Also, at your house, you have to run the house. Run the house, you got to buy stuff. You got to buy goods and services. You need furniture at your house, don't you? Need electric? Oh, you're going to have to pay for the service. Oh, you need water? Got to pay for the service. Oh, you need food? You got to pay for the food. So, where does that money go that you're spending on all these things? Who can tell me? Where's the money go? You spend the money on furniture. You spend the money on water, electric, food, clothing. Your household is spending all these things. Where's the money going? Tell me. Who can tell me? Where's the money go? Money you spend.
Back
Miss Rhodes.
to the stores.
I'm sorry, Miss Anthony. What was that?
Back into the company or the
Back into
service?
the companies. Yeah, back into the firms, exactly. So you're getting money from the company, firms, in form of income, and you got money going back to the firms in the form of goods and services that you need for your household. It's part of the cycle, right? You get the money from them, you give the money back to them, right? One way or shape or form. Just imagine if you worked for Amazon, right? You know, you got your house, you buy all your stuff on Amazon, you get the money from Amazon, right? That's how the cycle works. So the firms hire you to work for them, the households to work for them, to sell goods and services that the firm produces to the households. The cycle goes in both directions, is what I'm saying. So here's how it looks. Got the market factors for production, okay? The households provide the firm, the company, the companies, with labor, because the household people that live in the households are working for the companies. The land, the people who live in the houses also own the companies, and they're bringing property, plant, and equipment, the capital. Some money. All those things go into the company. The company produces the goods and the services. So that's what comes out of it. So what goes into the company is the labor, land, and the capital. Okay? The labor, the property, plant, and the equipment from the households, because remember, the households provide the labor and they also own the companies. So all of those resources come into the company. The company, the firms, produce the products, the goods, and the services to sell to the households. So that's what's come out of the firm on the top side. But in exchange for the labor, land, and capital that goes into the companies from the households, the companies provide wages. The company provides wages, income to the households. The companies also pay the wages. They have to pay rent for the buildings that they're in and other expenses, etc., which is the profit the companies make. Yeah? The revenue minus all of the expenses equals the profit. Yeah? The revenue, that's the money that the firms take in from sale of goods and services, minus wages, rent, etc., equals profit in a general sense. Net income, for those of you from accounting. Yeah? That's their profit. So the net income, the profit, that is the gross domestic product. But also the income that the households earn from working at the companies is also a part of gross domestic product. We're not done yet. Earlier I had said that people living in the households work for the companies. The companies provide the people living in the households with their income. The people who live in the households need to survive. So they need to buy things like furniture. They got to pay for their utility bills. They need clothing. They need food, right? Basic survival stuff, transportation, etc. They spend money. The households spend money. That spending is a part of the gross domestic product. When the households spend money, that money gets pumped into the companies as a form of revenue, right, for the company. You see the green box. The green box is complete. The companies produce the goods and the services. They pay the employees wages, make a profit. The households are receiving income from the wages. The households are then spending the wages on the goods and services that they need. The spending that the households are spending on goods and services, that's revenue for the company. The companies sell you the goods and services, right? So they sell you the goods and services sold to the households. Yeah? So we see the red part is done. The households provide the companies with labor, land, equipment, capital, because the households are not only employees, they're also owners of these companies. So they're bringing a lot of stuff into the companies. The company produces the goods and services that are sold back to the households. See, it's a cycle. There's cycles. And that's how it works. This is the very basics of how gross domestic product is measured. But it's also the basics of the cycle of the economy. Now, of course, the diagram's not perfect. It doesn't include everything. We're missing taxes, obviously. The taxes, you already know, but the taxes come out of your paychecks, your income, yeah. The taxes come out of your paychecks, but the taxes also come out of goods and services. Yeah, when you buy the goods and services, you got to pay sales tax. When when you get your paycheck, you got to pay your taxes. So taxes are being collected on both parts of that diagram. It's just not represented there, but it's happening. We know that. So the government is omitted from the diagram. The diagram also seems to be missing things like savings and loans, because the households are not the only ones providing the companies, the firms, with revenue, with the capital. Well, the capital sometimes comes from banks, loans, yeah? On both sides. The household might need to borrow money to buy a house. The firms might need to borrow money to buy the company, or to at least finance the company. Right? So that part's kind of missing from that diagram. That would be an offshoot of the diagram. And then another thing that's missing from that diagram is, what about trade? Right? Trade's missing. The goods and services that we get from other countries is missing from that diagram. Yeah. So the diagram's not perfect, but it purposely omits those three things. And the reason why the taxes, the loans, and the trade are missing from that diagram is because we are only interested in what is done domestically and produced domestically. That's why we call it gross domestic product. Gross domestic product, GDP. It measures what's happening in the country only, and it's a closed system. Okay, we're looking at gross, we're looking at profit, and we're looking at income. Okay, and we're looking at what's being spent locally within the country. Yep. So the definition, gross domestic product, market value of all final goods and services produced within a country in a given period of time, 1 year. Okay, so gross domestic product. Let's just break this down a little bit further, okay? Market value. There's that word, market value. Market value simply means what it's worth on the market. Yeah, market value of all final goods and services. Final goods and services means what's available for sale. That's what final goods. For those of you who took accounting with me, you know that that is called finished goods. Finished goods. Okay. Those are the products that are available for sale. They're finished, right? They were done making them. We're selling them. That's called a finished good. Okay, so final goods and services. So what's available for sale in a particular period of time. Typically, we'll look at GDP as 1 year, 1 full year. It can also be measured quarterly. First quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. Goods are valued at their market prices. Again, it's what they're worth in the open market. Sometimes it's important to also note that the market value is not the same as intrinsic value. We'll talk about that in a little bit. All goods and services produced and legally sold. Okay, legally. I have to mention this because, as you may be aware, we have what's called black markets. Legal markets are where we can legally buy and sell goods and services. A black market is where goods that are technically illegal are bought and sold. Okay. Legal goods and services, hopefully I don't have to go down that conversation with y'all. Okay. But, illegal drugs, illegal acts, illegal services. I'm not going to go down that road with y'all. You know what I'm talking about. But there's an illegal marketplace for those things. So gross domestic product does not account for the illegal stuff, only the legal stuff. Final goods and services means the finished products that are available for sale. So we don't count the goods and services that are in production. Okay, we only count ones that are available for sale. For those of you who took accounting with me, you know that there's 3 types of inventory. There's raw materials, work in process, and finished goods. Raw materials, those are the raw materials that we use in the manufacturing process to create a product. Okay, if we're making a car, for example, the raw materials will be aluminum, steel, rubber, components, etc. Those are the raw materials. Take our stuff from raw materials, we put it into work in process. Work in process is where the assembly line employees are putting together the product. And then finished goods is when the product is done, it's made, and it's available for sale. That's when the car rolls off the assembly line. It's done. It's a finished good. So the gross domestic product only takes into account the finished goods. We call these final goods. They're available for sale. Goods and services. Goods are obviously tangible. These are things you could physically touch. Yeah, that's what tangible means. Things you could physically touch. Apples, oranges, furniture, etc. Those are tangible. You can physically touch them. Clothing, yeah. Intangible usually are services. I can't. That sounds terrible. I can't physically touch a cleaning service. I can't physically touch the tax service. I can't physically touch services. I can't physically touch a concert. I could go to a concert. I can't physically touch it. I can't physically touch a cell phone service. I can touch the phone, but not the service itself, right? Yeah, so services you can't physically touch, obviously, because they're not tangible. I don't know. I can't go down that road. It'd just be too funny. Okay, produced. Again, we're looking at products being produced during this time period. Currently produced goods, not goods that were produced in the past. And production is the manufacturing process of goods, right? That's what produced means. Yep. And of course, services performed in the current time frame. So goods and services that are current. Within one country's borders, United States, for example, done by our own citizens or by other groups of individuals within the country who are also working in the country. During a particular time, quarter or year. Quarter is 3 months. For those of you who don't know that, you should know that. January, February, March, that's quarter 1. April, May, June, that's quarter 2. July, August, September, quarter 3. October, November, December, quarter 4. The gross domestic product in the United States has currently decreased in 3 quarters, and during the year of 2022. Quarter 1, quarter 2, and quarter 3 all saw losses in gross domestic product, which means we are technically in a recession. Now, gross domestic product, as you saw in the cute little diagram, was represented by a couple of things. One of those things was consumption. Consumption for the households, yeah, and for the businesses. Consumption is the utilization of the resources. That's consumption, utilization of the resources. I'm using labor in the company. The household is using goods and services bought by the company. From the company, sorry. It's consumption. Yeah. C. Plus investment. Investment is the use of capital, investment into the companies. Yeah. Investment. Use of capital into the companies to purchase property, plant, equipment, to grow the company. That's all done by investing. It also represents, to a degree, stock market investing. Companies that are publicly traded through open exchanges, that's a form of investing. Plus, government purchases. Government purchases is the spending by the federal government. It's government purchases. That's spending done by the federal government. We call that government purchases. Plus net exports. As you recall from our conversation on international trade. Exports are goods and services leaving the country and being imported into another country. Exports are goods and services that one country sells to another. The United States exports their surplus wheat to Japan. Net exports are all of the exports added up. Net exports. So the formula is Y, which is GDP. So GDP equals consumption plus investment plus government purchases plus net exports. This is the formula for gross domestic product. So consumption, again, is all the spending done by households on goods and services. You need to pay for rent, utilities, furniture, clothing, etc. All of those things are consumption. The only thing that doesn't get included in consumption is the purchase of a new house. Now, the reason for this: consumption does not include the purchase of a new house because the purchase of a new house is done by bank loans. Yeah, they're backed by banks. And because banking is not included in gross domestic product, therefore, the things that are funded by bank loans, like purchase of a new house, is not included in consumption. Investing. Investing is the spending on goods that will be used in the future to produce more goods. We call this property, plant, and equipment. Property, plant, and equipment. Investing. A company purchases property, plant, and equipment to produce more goods. That's why companies do that. That's called expansion. The company expands by purchasing additional property, plant, and equipment to produce more goods. They're investing in the company. Very straightforward. Government purchases. Government spends money on goods and services for the government. This federal, state, and local, sure. These services, road construction, building a new school, building new infrastructure. I could keep going, yeah? So these are all spending decisions made by the governments. New schools, new police department, new fire department, new hospital, new roads, sewer lines, new water lines, new utilities. These are all government purchases. They spend more money than they take in, usually, unfortunately. This excludes transfer payments. Transfer payments are not included in government purchases. Things like Social Security or unemployment insurance benefits. I want you to understand something. And again, for those of you who took accounting with me, you already know this. Social Security, the government doesn't pay for that. You do. That comes out of your paycheck. And your employer also pays for the Social Security. The government has nothing to do with it. They're just the custodians of that savings account called Social Security. Unemployment insurance, the government has nothing to do with that. Unemployment insurance is paid by your employers, contributing to the Unemployment Insurance Benefit Fund. Okay? So Social Security and unemployment, those are not funded by the government. They are funded by your employers and you, the employee. So therefore, those are not included in government purchases. Makes sense. The government just, they manage that stuff, but they don't contribute to it. Exports. This is very simple. Exports minus imports equals net exports. Exports minus imports equals net exports. Exports minus imports equals net exports. Exports, as you know, is the sale of goods and services from one country to another. The United States exports surplus wheat to Japan. That's called an export. Imports, as you know, are goods and services that are purchased from other countries and imported into the country. Example, Japan sells surplus computers to the United States. The United States imports computers from Japan. So, exports minus imports equals net exports. And I could already hear you asking the question, Dr. B, can this be a negative number? Yes, it can be. When it's a negative number, you don't add it, you subtract it from the other three components. Okay, let's take a look at some data. And we'll play with this formula. So here's some data. Gross domestic product was $17.947 billion in 2015. That's a lot of billions. Yep. $17.947 billion. A lot of billions, yeah. That was the gross domestic product for 2015. How did we get it? 12.272 came from consumer spending, plus investment of $3.021 billion, plus government spending of $3.183 billion, minus, normally a plus, but I said remember, net exports could be negative. So minus $529 million equals $17.947 billion. So just remember the formula. It's very straightforward. Consumer spending, C, plus investments, I, plus G, government spending, plus X, net exports. If net exports is negative, a positive sign turns into a negative in the formula. This is a little complex, okay? We need to figure out what is what. So here we have a list of transactions. These transactions represent various components in gross domestic product. So let's take a look. Debbie spends $300 to buy her husband dinner at the finest restaurant in Boston. That's, of course, consumer spending, $300. Sarah spends $1,200 on a new laptop in a publishing business. The laptop was built in, of course, China. But notice what the sentence said. A new laptop to use in a publishing business. To use in a publishing business. What do you think? What component is this? Letter B here. Sarah spends $1,200 on a new laptop in a to use in a publishing business. Is this consumer spending or is it investment? Who can tell me? What is it? I'll answer at once. Letter B, is that consumer spending investment. Or is it investment? Miss Anthony, investment. Now, tell me why.
Because if she's spending $1,200 on a new laptop to use for her publishing business, that means that it will help her produce what she has to do, and she will get paid for what she does.
You got it. You got it, Miss Anthony. That's 100% correct. So Sarah's spending this $1,200 investing into the business. Because remember, when the business uses their property, plant, and equipment, when they purchase property, plant, and equipment, they're investing in the business. And Sarah is purchasing equipment, a new laptop, to use in her publishing business. So yes, it's investing. Very well done. Jane spends $800 on a computer to use in her editing business. She got last year's model on sale. Who gives a damn? From a local manufacturer. That's investing. It's being used in her editing business. General Motors builds 500 million worth of cars, but consumers only buy 470 worth of them. So 500 minus the 470, that would be consumption, would be the difference. So 470 is consumption, and the remaining balance would be in remaining balance, I think, would probably be remain in the business. Here, let's see what the answers are. Okay, so first one was consumption, yes. The second one, Sarah spends $1,200. Investment, yes. Oh, here's the interesting part of that. Other interesting part of that question. The laptop was built in China. So technically, this would not affect GDP. Well, yes, investment went up by $1,200 because she's using it in the business. Net exports went down by $1,200 because we imported the laptop. So technically, there's no change in GDP. But I guess that was technically a two-parter, yeah? Jane spends $800 editing business. Yeah, it's investment. But GDP is not affected. Why? The second sentence. It's last year's model. It wasn't made this year, so it doesn't affect GDP. General Motors. 500 million worth of cars, but only 470 sold. Consumption, 470. Yeah. Inventory investment, 30 million. That's the difference. So that's a two-parter. And gross domestic product technically rose by the whole 500 million. Gross domestic product, as you know, it measures the nation's production. Yeah. Measures the output. We measure consumption by the households, investments by the businesses, government spending, and net exports. All these things together equal the gross domestic product. The output, we base it on current pricing. We call this nominal. I can never pronounce that word. I'm so bad at pronouncing that word. Nominal. I'll never get it. Nominal gross domestic product. I can never pronounce that word for the life of me. This is Not corrected for inflation. Inflation has no basis on nominal GDP. Real gross domestic product values output using the prices of a base year, which we look at last year's prices, and we correct it based off of inflation. We call that real gross domestic product. We typically use the nominal GDP number as our real gross domestic product number. They're usually equal to get the base year amount. Example. This is how we calculate nominal GDP. So, example. We take the price times the quantity plus one product plus the price times the quantity of another product to get the total for the year. Okay? So, for example, we got two products here. We got pizza and we got lattes. Both I love. Pizza, $10 per pizza at 400 pizzas, plus $2 lattes, 1,000 lattes. I don't know if I could do 1,000 lattes in a year. That's a lot. But the nominal GDP for 2014 is 6,000. We take price times quantity plus price times quantity for each product, each individual product. 2015, price times quantity times price times quantity. 2015, nominal GDP was 8,250. For 2016, it was 10,800. We saw an increase from 2014 to 2015 of 37.5%. And from 2015 to 2016 of 30.9%. Here's how we get the percentages, okay? The way we get the percentages is we take the new amount, the new year, minus the old year, divided by the old year. So it would be 2015, 8,250, minus 2014, 6,000. So 8,250 minus 6,000. That's on the top part. Divided by 6,000. You multiply by 100. Get the 37.5. So again, it's the new year, or the new amount, 8,250, minus 6,000, gets you to 2,250. Divided by 6,000, the old year, equals 0.375. Multiply that by 100, and you get 37.5%. So that's how you get percent change, yeah? That's the formula for percent change. New minus old divided by old. New year minus previous year divided by previous year. That's how you get percent change. That's how we got 37.5 and 30.9. 30.9, we took 2016 minus 2015 divided by 2015. Call it the base year. So the base year for 2015, that was 2014. The base year for 2016, that was 2015. We get that term base year. Real GDP. So that was nominal GDP I just showed you, yes? Which represents the incremental increases. That's why I call it nominal. Real GDP, we take the base year, 2014, times the quantity, plus price times the quantity, 6,000. Well, it's similar to the previous one. Now, here's where it gets different. We see that the base year stays 2014. That's the base year. We take the base times the quantity. The base times the quantity, and we do that for every year. So if the base year is 2014, we keep the base price, $10 2014. So 10 times the 400, 10 times the 500, 10 times the 600. 2 for the times 1,000, 2 times 1,100, 2 times 1,200. You see where I'm going. Well, we see the difference. Yeah. In nominal GDP, we're simply taking price times quantity plus price times quantity. Very straightforward. We do that for every year. And then, of course, we find the differences between the 2 years. Yeah. For real gross domestic product, we take the base. And the base is the first year. Yep. And then we take that as the base for every year thereafter. So you get real GDP. But we also see that there's a difference in the increases, yeah? 2014 to 15 is 20%, 15 to 16 is 16.7. Remember, the formula to find a percent change is new minus old divided by old. So current year, 2015, minus prior year, 2014, divided by prior year, 2014. That gives us 20%. Of course, the other 15 to 16, 16 minus 15 divided by 15 gets us to 16.7. Just a matter of remembering the formulas is all. But if we compare nominal to gross to real GDPs, we can see, especially for 2015 and 2016, the primary differences. And the reason for that, of course, is 2014 was used as the base for real domestic product. For real gross domestic product. So that's why we see that in 2014 there's no change. We can also identify the difference in the percent changes, yes? And these percent changes would be consistent if inflation did not exist for the real gross domestic product. Which is, it's so interesting when they measure gross domestic product, when we do have high inflation like what we're experiencing in 2022, because the numbers that they give us, the real gross domestic product numbers, don't account for inflation. So if that's the case, the nominal gross domestic product would tell us what the real numbers look like. Yeah, so I just find that interesting. Graphically, we can see what it looks like over time and how the two are relatively similar. 2009, I think we know what happened in 2009. That was the years that started the Great Recession. And there was no inflation in 2009 because the market had collapsed. And we can see that the real and nominal GDP were the same during 2009. Will that happen again? Maybe. I don't know. It's always a possibility. We can measure overall price levels and the changes in price levels relative to the base year. And the way to do that is through what we call the gross domestic product deflator. So the formula for this is relatively simple. We take nominal GDP divided by real GDP times 100. That's what we call the GDP deflator. Basically, it measures the changes in actual price. Yeah. Uh, country, our country especially, the economy has what we call an inflation rate. This tells us the percentage increase in the GDP deflator from one year to the next. So if you want to find out how much inflation increased by from 2021 to 2022, you would use the GDP deflator for each year. So nominal divided by real times 100 for 2021, and do the same thing for 2022, and you'll be able to see the change in the inflation rate from year to year. For the base year, using our example, of course, the GDP deflator is going to be 100% because we're taking the base over the nominal. So, yeah, it's going to be 100%, obviously. If we do this for 2015, nominal divided by real times 100 gives us 114%. For 2016, we're at 128%. And we see, what does this mean, right? Well, it tells us that from 2014 to 2015, the inflation rate was about 14%. From 2015 to 2016, it was about 28%. Yeah. Then, of course, you could subtract the two to get the actual difference. So 2016 to 2015, the inflation rate would have been 14%. It's very interesting. Yeah, it's very interesting. I think that's correct. Okay. Anyway, so yeah, it's important to understand the difference between the nominal GDP and the real GDP, how the deflator works. The deflator tells us really what the actual inflation rate is. Nominal GDP tells us what the GDP is with inflation. The real takes out inflation. And that's really the primary differences. So nominal, we just take the price times the quantity, plus the price times the quantity if there's another product, et cetera. Real GDP, we take the base year times the quantity. Base year times the quantity. So that's why you see 30. And then for 2016, for the inflator, you can see the price times the quantity plus the price times the quantity for the nominal rate. To get the real rate, we take the base year times the quantity plus the base year times the quantity. At the real GDP, we take the nominal GDP divided by the real GDP times 100 to get the GDP inflation rate, deflator rate. Sorry. So the relationship, gross domestic product and economic well-being. GDP gives us an average of standard of living in the country. It tells us how well the country is doing as a whole, really. When GDP is positive, which it normally is, it means we're doing okay. You know, we're not consuming as much as we're producing, which is a good thing, and it usually gives us an idea of how well the country is doing as a whole. It's not perfect, obviously. It doesn't include a lot of things like banking and other aspects of investing, but it does give us a pretty good idea from a very general sense of how well the country's doing. Just a nice little quote from Kennedy, 1968. Things that GDP doesn't take into consideration. Time off. Yeah, it's not going to account for time off. Quality of the natural environment. Yeah. Childhood care, parent care, etc. GDP does not take any of these things into consideration. Equitable distribution of income. GDP is only measuring the full country as a whole. Yeah, it doesn't take into consideration people's individual situations. Do we care about GDP? Larger the GDP is, it means the better off the country's doing financially. We could build better schools, have a cleaner environment, have good health care, etc. These are why it's important. Yeah. A good GDP usually relates to a good quality of life, typically. This graph, a little outdated, but it's mostly accurate still. We see that the GDP, based off of GDP, you can correlate GDP with life expectancy, how long people live, based off of gross domestic product, how well the gross domestic product is. I don't put too much into the reading this, but it's interesting. It basically tells us that higher GDP, we're going to have better healthcare. That's what the correlation is. Yep. Same with schooling. Higher GDP, we're going to have better education systems. Makes sense, of course. Satisfaction rates. Yeah, I don't know. I guess you can correlate satisfaction with higher GDPs. In summary, GDP measures the total income of the country and expenditures of the country. We look at consumption of household spending, investments into the companies, property, plant, and equipment, government spending, net exports. Nominal GDP is measured using the current price, and real GDP is using a base price to correlate with inflation. GDP helps to measure a country's economic well-being, although it's not a perfect situation. Comments about gross domestic product? Questions about gross domestic product?
Pretty much understandable.
Yeah, thank you, Miss Anthony. Yeah, it's pretty strange.
Especially when it comes to the economy and how things have changed and how inflation and everything is really turning us around right now.
Yeah.
And how things, I mean, really, when I went into the store, I seen, those little small cups of fruit that used to be $1?
Yeah, I remember those. Yeah.
They're $2.69 now.
Oh my God.
And I usually buy 10 of them, so I bought none of them.
Yeah, that inflation is killing us, isn't it? You walk into a grocery store and it's just unbelievable sometimes. I walk around, I'm like, hey, I remember when that candy bar used to be 99 cents. Now it's freaking $3. It's like, wow. Yeah, it's mind blowing. And now you get to understand how it works, through this course. Just us talking about how inflation's measured and how it impacts us, and this is the real stuff. That what you're learning in this course is exactly what happens in our economy. Is it perfect? No, of course not. It's definitely not perfect. But understanding GDP and understanding inflation and understanding how economics works in a general sense is really important because as you go through life, it's important that you understand how things like your income affect your well-being, affect the economy as a whole. Yeah. So just very interesting stuff. Cool. Any other comments, questions, or concerns? Okay. Cool. Awesome. Thank you, Miss Anthony. Appreciate that. Just as a quick reminder, what's due Sunday night? Your Chapter 10 discussion board. Yes. Oh, I know. Oh, Dr. B, you're killing us with these discussions. Yeah, the discussion board, it's worth 10% of your entire grade. Do not skip it. Okay, please make sure you participate in the discussion board. I would like to thank Kiona for kicking us off on this discussion board. Her post is really nice, okay? Just take some notes here. She's got a nice full paragraph. She's got a reference there at the bottom. This is exactly what I'm looking for, yeah? Please try to do this initial post by Thursday night. I'd like you to do it earlier than that if you can. The reason why is because you need time to respond to two of your classmates. So one original post, like what Kiana has here, and then I want you to respond to two of your classmates. That will get you the full 10 points. Yeah. Remember, 10 points. That's a lot of points now. That's a full letter grade. So please don't pass up on that. Very important that you get a full letter grade. Yeah. So that's what we got going on. Next week, week 8, midterm exam. Okay, the midterm exams next week, y'all. So what does that mean for you? If you have any late work that you have not yet done, it must be done by this Sunday night. Must. Because university policy, y'all, I cannot accept late work past the midterm exam. Okay? Because I need to formulate your midterm exam grade and submit that to the university. So if you have anything that is late for whatever reason, get that done now. Right? I don't want you to miss any points in this course. It's important to me that y'all pass, and I'm here to help you make you pass. But I can't help you if you don't help you. Okay? And the only way you can help you is to do the work. So please make sure the work get done, and make sure the work get done on time. Okay, remember, if you're not happy with some of your grades, there's a couple things you can do. Number one is try again. Okay, homework assignments and quizzes, try again. All right. Number two is if you're still not doing well, you're probably not reviewing the PowerPoint presentations or the book. Be very, very careful. Read very carefully. Very important, yes. The midterm exam, it's probably going to have some mostly content questions, definitions. It'll probably have a couple of other things in there. There might be a few math questions, but it's usually not that bad. You just plug in the formula, yeah? You got to know what the formula is, though. So just think about these things before you get to the midterm. The midterm exam is not timed. Okay, I don't do timers. I don't do that kind of stuff. I don't like stress. Yeah, and that'll be due not this coming Sunday, but next Sunday. That'll be due. Yeah, on the 16th. I'll talk to you more about it as we get closer. But thank you all so much for your time this evening. Appreciate all of you. I wish you all the best. If you need any help, any comments, questions, or concerns, you can email me, call me, set up office hours. I'm here for you all the time. You know that. So, and with that, please stay safe. Wash your hands. And that virus is still going around now, so wash your hands. Do the right things. I'll see you all again next time. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Thank you so much. Bye bye.